Hello, BookTube. This is the first book haul of February 2026. This haul is comprised of two orders. The first is from Powell's, the great bookstore in Portland, Oregon. Powell's recently had a $20 off of $100 sale, so I took advantage of that and bought 10 books. The second part of this haul is from Blackwell's, the British bookstore that ships to the United States and around the world. I bought two books from them. The two orders, or the two packages, came in today, although the Powell's package should have come yesterday, but the post office forgot to deliver it and did not come back around to deliver it. So I had to pretty much, I was panicking, wondering what happened to this package. Fortunately, it came today, and I'm not going to be having nearly the day I had yesterday. I will probably talk a little bit about that with this coming weekly reads. Needless to say, it is a day I do not want to repeat. Anyway, let's get on with the books, because this definitely pleases me. So, for the Powell's order, I'm booking it with two novels by two dudes, and there are 6 books by women. So, first up is Talking It Over by Julian Barnes. First, there's Stuart, stolid, conventional, but not quite so dull as he pretends to be. Then there is Oliver, his glamorous, epigrammatic best friend. And veering wildly between them is Julian, the cryptic beauty who marries Stuart and then astonishes everyone by falling in love with Oliver. These three are at once the protagonists and the hilariously unreliable eyewitnesses of the latest novel by the author of A History of the World in 10.5 chapters. A funny, elegant, and affecting book that reimagines the romantic triangle as a weapon whose edges cut like razor blades. Also by Julian Barnes is The Sense of an Ending. And there are... Oh, okay, good. French flaps are useful for something. This intense novel follows Tony Webster, a middle-aged man, as he contends with a past he never thought much about, until his closest childhood friends return with a vengeance, one of them from the grave, another maddeningly present. Tony thought he left this all behind as he built a life for himself, and his career has provided him with a secure retirement and an amicable relationship with his ex-wife and daughter, who now has a family of her own. But when he is presented with a mysterious legacy, he is forced to revise his estimation of his own nature and place in the world. Celestial Bodies by Jokha Alharthi. Translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth. Once again, the French flaps are useful for something. In the village of Al Awafi in Oman, we encounter 3 sisters: Maya, who marries after a heartbreak; Asma, who aspires to a different kind of life and marriage; and Kala, who chooses to refuse all offers and await a reunion with the man she loves, who has immigrated to Canada. These 3 women and their families, their losses and loves, unspool beautifully against a backdrop of a rapidly changing Oman, a country evolving from a traditional slave-owning society into its complex present. Through the sisters, we glimpse a society in all its degrees, from the very poorest of the local slave families to those making money through the advent of new wealth. The first novel originally written in Arabic to ever win the Man Booker International Prize and the first book by a female Omani author to be translated into English, Celestial Bodies marks the arrival in the United States of a major international writer. Colored Television by Danzy Senna. After a long, precarious stretch bouncing among sketchy rentals and sublets, Jane and her family are living in luxury for a year, house-sitting in the hills above Los Angeles. The gig magically coincides with Jane's sabbatical, giving her the time and space she needs to finish her second novel, a century-spanning epic her artist husband, Lenny, dubs her Mulatto War and Peace. Finally, some semblance of stability and success seems to be within her grasp. But things don't work out quite as hoped. Desperate for a plan B, Jane finagles a meeting with Hampton Ford, a hot producer with a major development deal at a streaming network. Together they begin to develop the Jackie Robinson of biracial comedies. At last things seem to be going right for Jane, until they go terribly wrong. Crooked Little Heart by Anne Lamott. With the same winning combination of humor and honesty that marked her recent nonfiction bestsellers, Operating Instructions and Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott's new novel gives us an exuberant, richly absorbing portrait of a family for whom the joys and sorrows of everyday life are magnified under the glare of the unexpected. Rosie Ferguson, in the first bloom of young womanhood, is obsessed with tournament tennis. Her mother is a recovering alcoholic, still grieving the death of her first husband. Her stepfather, a struggling writer, is wrestling with his own demons. And now Rosie finds that her athletic gifts, once a source of triumph and escape, place her in peril as a shadowy man who stalks her from the bleachers seems to be developing an obsession of his own. So, this novel and I have some unfinished business. Blue Angel by Francine Prose. It's been years since Svensson, a professor in a New England creative writing program, has published a novel. It's been even longer since any of his students have shown promise. Enter Angela Argo, a Paris-tattooed student with a rare talent for writing. Angela is just the thing Svensson needs. And better yet, she wants his help. But as we all know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Deliciously risque, Blue Angel is a withering take on today's academic mores and a scathing tale that vividly shows what can happen when academic politics collides with political correctness. This novel and I most certainly have unfinished business. The Road Home by Rose Tremain. After losing both his job and his beloved wife, Lev journeys from Eastern Europe to London in search of employment to support his family. At first, he is homeless, but before long he lands a job, finds shelter, and even begins to make friends. While he embarks on an affair with a fellow restaurant worker and dodges the attentions of other women, Lev's new life remains constricted. Homesickness dogs him, not only for nostalgic reasons, but because he doesn't belong, body or soul, to his new country. But can Lev really go home again? Rose Tremain's prodigious talents as a novelist are on full display in a work that freshly illuminates the immigrant experience and never loses sight of what is truly important in our lives. The Collected Poems by Sylvia Plath. By the time of her death on 11th February 1963, Sylvia Plath had written a large bulk of poetry. To my knowledge, she never scraped any of her poetic efforts. With one or two exceptions, she brought every piece she worked on to some final form acceptable to her, rejecting at most the odd verse or a false head or a false tail. Her attitude to her verse was artisan-like. If she couldn't get a table out of the material, she was quite happy to get a chair out or even a toy. The end product for her was not so much a successful poem as something that had temporarily exhausted her ingenuity. So this book contains not merely what verse she saved, but after 1956, all she wrote. This is from Ted Hughes' introduction. Okay. So, Mr. Wilder and Me by Jonathan Coe. A naive young woman called Callista finds herself working for the famed Hollywood director Billy Wilder, about whom she knows almost nothing. While Callista is thrilled with her new adventure, Wilder himself is living with the realization that his star may be on the wane. In a novel that is at once a tender coming-of-age story and an intimate portrait of one of cinema's most intriguing figures, Jonathan Coe turns his gaze on the nature of time and fame, of family, and the treacherous lure of nostalgia. And The Proof of My Innocence, also by Jonathan Coe. And once again, we turn to the French flap. A political satire wrapped up in a murder mystery, The Proof of My Innocence is a wickedly funny and razor-sharp new novel from one of Britain's most beloved novelists. Post-university life doesn't suit Phil. Time passes slowly living back home with her parents, working a 0-hour contract serving Japanese food to tourists at Heathrow's Terminal 5. As for her budding plans of becoming a writer, those are going nowhere. That is until family friend Chris comes to stay. He's been on the path to uncover a sinister think tank founded at Cambridge University in the 1980s that's been scheming to push the British government in a more extreme direction. But speaking truth to power can be dangerous, and power will stop at nothing to stay on top. As Britain finds itself under the leadership of a new Prime Minister whose tenure will only last for 7 weeks, Chris pursues his story to a conference being held deep in the Cotswolds, where events take a sinister turn. But will the solution to the mystery lie in contemporary politics, or in a literary enigma that is almost 40 years old? And finally, the 2 books from Blackwell's. Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart, which does not have a synopsis, so I will pick 2 blurbs. The first from the judges of the Booker Prize 2020. We were bowled over by this first novel, which creates an amazingly intimate, compassionate, gripping portrait of addiction, courage, and love. A long-term classic that will be loved, admired, and remembered for a very long time. The second from The Times. A heartbreaking novel, both beautiful and brutal, it is the story of a boy bullied and buffeted by events, trying to grow up in a hostile world, and the chronicle of the slow, painful disintegration of a woman. You root for both characters, hoping that they find peace and happiness, tough, tender, and beautifully sad. And finally, Young Mungo, also by Douglas Stuart. Born under different stars, Protestant Mungo and Catholic James live in a hyper-masculine world. They are caught between 2 of Glasgow's housing estates, where young working-class men divide themselves along sectarian lines and fight territorial battles for the sake of reputation. They should be sworn enemies, and yet, as they begin to fall in love, they dream of escape, and Mungo must work hard to hide his true self from all those around him. So, yeah, quite happy for that. So let's see here. How will we do a Steve pyramid? I think we will begin with Sylvia Plath. So, The Collected Poems by Sylvia Plath. The Road Home by Rose Tremain. Mr. Wilder and Me by Jonathan Coe. The Proof of My Innocence by Jonathan Coe. Blue Angel by Francine Prose. Crooked Little Heart by Lamott. Color Television by Danzy Senna. Celestial Bodies by Jokha Alharthi. The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. Talking It Over by Julian Barnes. Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart. And Young Mungo, also by Douglas Stuart. Okay. Look forward tomorrow for the February manga haul. Until then, BookTube, thank you and have a great afternoon.